going on, vinyl community? Welcome to another video with the record spinner, and it is indeed the first video of 2026, so happy new year to you all. Today's video is going to be the first episode of a new series entitled Vinyl Pickups. So for as long as I've been running this channel, since 2018, I have always done monthly or bi-monthly vinyl haul videos showing you guys my latest finds. And I think those videos tend to be a staple within the vinyl community, and that's just down to people always being interested in what other people's flavor of the time being are at any given point. But within the last couple of months, my buying patterns have started to change for a number of reasons. It's tough to grasp, but when I had acquired my official copy of Kiss's Sonic Boom some time ago, it felt like I had crossed this sort of threshold, since it was in fact my #1 vinyl collection grail piece. And I felt this sense of comfortability that I quite hadn't felt before in my collecting journey. And then on the other hand, as one approaches their early 30s, life starts to change. And currently my girlfriend Abby and I are saving up for our first home. And instead of going after every single thing I impulsively lay my eyes on, I've become a bit more selective. Now, this does not mean by any means that I've stopped collecting or buying, because I love this hobby very much, and I don't think I'll ever stop, because let's face it, us collectors will always have some sort of itch. But what I'm saying is the vinyl haul videos won't be as frequent as they used to, but I will always share what I have when there is a nice sizable amount to show. But I gotta say, we are kicking off the first episode of Vinyl Pickups on a bombastic note, because this will cover 3 months worth of vinyl acquisitions from October, November, and December of 2025. We have deluxe tiny vinyl and 7-inch picture disc pressings of Ghost, 50th anniversary reissues of my favorite band Kiss, reissues of the Donnas, elemental mixes of King Crimson, 4th anthology installments of the Beatles, a little slice of Jazz Sabbath from Record Store Day Black Friday, some Walmart exclusives of Pink Floyd and Iron Maiden, and so much more. It's about to go deep, so without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the latest vinyl pickups. Okay, so we're going to be kicking this haul off with some live prog. And I picked this up at a local indoor flea market called The Spot. And the booth that I got it from was called Void Records, which out of all of the other vendors that sell at this indoor flea market that sell records, this guy is the shit. Let's just say that. He has vintage pressings, he has a lot of newer stuff, as well as some bootlegs, all in that sort of classic, hard, progressive, psych rock vein. But beyond just selling cool records, Void Records is also a local record label that specializes in reissuing a lot of those privately pressed, obscured albums, kind of in the vein of what like Riding Easy does, where originals go for hundreds of dollars and then they reissue it for, you know, a budget kind of price. So be on the lookout for a future video where I talk about that label. But needless to say, I was thumbing through the bins and I came across this record that kind of caught my eye, and it was for a good price, and I figured, why not? And it is Jethro Tull live at the Newport Pop Festival in 1969. So this is right around the time of the Stand Up album. Martin Barr was in the band at this point, and the set list is classic early Tull. Nothing Is Easy, Song for Jeffrey, Back to the Family, the live version of Dharma for One, which is fantastic, has Clive Bunker's drum solo, Martin's tune, as well as the medley of We Used to Know, For a Thousand Mothers. Now, I was doing some reading on this release. Supposedly, it might be the Stockholm show, which was a radio broadcast at the time. I'll have to give it a listen, but regardless, I'm sure this sounds absolutely wonderful. Has a great sort of plain cover of Ian Anderson playing the flute. There he appears on the back with a track list and a little write-up. Standard black vinyl, along with some nice red labels there. So, needless to say, kicking things off onto a solid start with some classic early live Tull. Okay, so here's a record that I almost picked up when I was in North Jersey with my girlfriend towards the end of September. Once we got settled in the area, we stopped at a Target just to stock up on some things, and they had a bunch of copies of this particular new release / exclusive that I remember seeing one copy of at the Target that was closest to us here back at home. So I thought to myself, you know, if that's still there when we get back, then it was meant to be. And needless to say, we found ourselves at Target, and it was meant to be. And I am talking about Mötley Crüe from the beginning. So this is a new compilation that Mötley has put out, and honestly, it features all of the typical Mötley Crüe greatest hits titles. You have Livewire, Shout at the Devil, Looks That Kill, Too Young to Fall in Love, Smoking in the Boys' Room. I mean, you can really just rattle off all the big heavy hitters from, Too Fast for Love to Dr. Feelgood, and then you have things like Afraid, Saints of Los Angeles. But then, where I think this compilation has its uniqueness is the inclusion of all the more recent stuff that Mötley has been doing over the last couple of years. They have one of the tracks that came off of the Dirt soundtrack, as well as the singles Dogs of War, Cancelled, and the big thing that they were hyping at the time when this was announced was the duet of Home Sweet Home with Dolly Parton, which, to be honest, when I listened to it, Dolly just laid a new vocal over top a remixed version of the original track. But nonetheless, it's unique. And also, I love the artwork. Just, that early era photo, from like Too Fast for Love era. I love these images very much. And I figured at some point I would snag this up. I do enjoy me some Mötley Crüe, not gonna lie. And, the artwork is pretty standard, it kind of follows this motif of just mainly relying on the text and the subtle band images. You have all the lyrics here kind of formatted in these sort of columns. And what's also cool too is that you have a sticker sheet which has all the variations of the Mötley Crüe logo over the years, which is pretty cool and unique. And as you see, this motif repeats itself on the center labels. And of course, like I said, it was a Target exclusive because it is pressed on sort of translucent black with white splatter vinyl. You can kind of see where that translucent effect really comes through with the main part of the vinyl. It looks great, and out of all the variants that I had seen, because there was a Walmart exclusive and a few others, this one looked to be the most appealing, because when it comes to sometimes like all these colored variants and things, I usually try to find ones that are as close to the main like color scheme of the artwork, and some were just kind of all over the place and such, but obviously it's down to personal preference. That's why you can go to any retailer and find a special exclusive. And then, here's more lyrics, and then they throw a pentagram on the very bottom there. And then I'll showcase the other LP just because it looks cool. I mean, because just down to the splatter effect, not, two are going to look the same. So it looks pretty sick. But nonetheless, really stoked to have a really cool new Mötley Crüe compilation in the collection. Okay, so recently my girlfriend and I were at a local shopping mall, and we stopped over at an FYE, my old stomping ground from many, many years back. And the store has transformed majorly in recent years. I remember when I was a kid growing up, going to FYE was such a big deal. That's where I got most of my CDs at. I remember saving up gift cards to get Ramones box sets there. And these days, it's kind of morphed into a more sort of pop culture, trendy kind of shop. So they've kind of adapted to the times. But for as much as they've downsized on CDs, which is what a lot of people kind of remember them for, they have embraced the vinyl revival, and they have some really good vinyl sections depending on location. And the one that we went to in Deptford was absolutely solid. And I saw this record, and it kind of struck me because I typically don't see a lot of records of this band in these sort of corporate retail fronts or big box retailers. So I was like, this is kind of amusing. Maybe I'll pick this up for myself. And that is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Chunky Shrapnel. So this right here is basically the soundtrack / live album to a sort of concert film documentary that they had put out around, I want to say 2020. They only showed it twice. I think they showed it in theaters in Australia. This came out around the time of COVID, so I'm not sure if that happened. They may have done like a digital premiere, but like you can't find this on YouTube or anywhere. If you look in the right places, you can find downloads of it. But they released the soundtrack as a live album, and it's a lot of live recordings from Europe in 2019, and there's also some freshly composed instrumental interludes by Stu McKenzie. So I figured this would be a fun little release to have, and also it looks sick too. It has the sort of gold foil type cover here on the front, some nice gold inlays here with the track list, as you can see there. Opens up, very nice and shiny. Obviously, it does come with the sort of obi strip as well, which is really cool. We have these printed inners. These are like stills from the film, which is pretty cool. full track list here. Nice rounded inner sleeves, which is a cool touch. Kind of reminds me of the Pink Floyd Obscured by Clouds jacket with those rounded corners. And this comes pressed on gold with black splatter vinyl. Very much matches the sort of artwork color motif on the cover. And then let's take a look at the second LP. I'll show you guys what that looks like. Let's get this out. More screenshots and stills from the film. There's the Eiffel Tower there. And here's the vinyl for that. Overall looks very, very solid. Yes, my collection of live Gizzard is slowly building. It's starting to kind of catch up with the studio stuff, but nonetheless, you know, this kind of exists beyond the sort of official bootleg stuff that kind of floods the market, and this can be seen as one of the very few sort of core live titles in the King Gizzard discography. Don't let the new looks fool you. I am still the same old Dylan you've known for all these years. The barber just cut a little bit of extra length off that I did not anticipate. But anyways, here we have some colored vinyl represses and reissues. Starting off with an album that celebrates its 10th anniversary this year in 2025. And this is nice because this is the sort of entry point that I started to get into this particular band. And the album that I am talking about is Meliora by Ghost. So this came out in 2015. This featured Papa Emeritus III on vocals, even though it's always been Tobias, just in the different masks and the PayPal regalia. This album features From the Pinnacle to the Pit, Cerise, which won a Grammy, He Is, Mummy Dust, Absolution. This album is absolutely killer. I had seen Ghost for the first time during this album cycle when they opened for Iron Maiden on the Book of Souls tour, and after the first song, I was like, I'm probably going to be obsessed with this band, and boy, I sure did. But this album is fantastic, and I know, not to sound like a gatekeeper, I think this was the last truly heavy, dark Ghost album. Not to say that albums like Perkel and Impera and Skeletor are a bit lightweight, but the satanic, you know, lyrical imagery was still very blatant with their work, and it's gone a bit more sort of metaphorical and colorful as the years progressed. But this album is just absolutely great. It's definitely one of my top favorites of theirs. Now, what they did for the 10th anniversary was they just did a colored vinyl repress of the deluxe version, which came out in 2016. And what makes it deluxe is that it includes the Popestar EP. So that, of course, has Square Hammer on it, but you also have covers of tracks by Echo and the Bunnymen, the Eurythmics, and such. And even though it's dubbed deluxe, it doesn't really feel deluxe because, you know, it doesn't replicate the original back cover of Meliora, which looked fantastic. There's no illustration booklet. It's overall very stark, you know, single pocket jacket, you know, basic polyline dinners. Kind of a letdown. What makes this unique is that it includes a commemorative Mummy Dust box. So when you go see Ghost live and they play the song Mummy Dust, if you're within the pit or at least close to the stage, there's these like little, you know, pyro cannons that shoot out these little bucks, and these are very, very collectible amongst fans. People always trade them, sell them and such, but here they did a 10th anniversary commemorative nose, so I can say that I have some Mummy Dust. But as for the color of the vinyl, each LP is pressed on sort of lime green vinyl, which is very vibrant and very much a color that's sort of associated with this era and album cycle. So it is very fitting, but nonetheless, it is cool to have a colored variant of this deluxe version, since Ghost is one of those few bands that I do go a little nuts when it comes to vinyl collecting and collecting variants and such. So very happy to get my hands on this and celebrate 10 years of Meliora. Now on to the big kahuna right here. So obviously when the Kiss Dress to Kill anniversary drop happened, obviously my attention went towards the box set, which I do have to say was priced very generously. There was no colored vinyl version that was close to $1,000 or so, but obviously my money was all in on the box set, and my my unboxing of that is on the channel for you to check out. But also, there was the colored vinyl as well as the picture disc. And now, just at that point in time when I purchased the box set, that was all that I could get. But I had a feeling that the colored vinyl would hang around a little bit. Obviously, the picture disc ended up selling out, even though they boosted the quantities, which is still very shocking. But I don't go too nuts when it comes to those picture discs, just because they're just too expensive to begin with, and they just sell out like that. But after, you know, a little bit of liquid courage, I was like, you know what? Screw it, because this pressing looks sick and I want to get the rest of them. Let's go for it. So I ended up copping the colored vinyl version of Dress to Kill. And as you can see here, they did a very nice deluxe touch with the jacket. They have some gold inlays here for the Kiss logo, as well as the album title. And they even replicated the embossment around the band photo, which they did not do in the box set. They just did a standard sort of jacket. So it's nice to see that at least for the colored vinyl version, they went ahead and did that. And then on the back, they kind of modified it a little bit. All the text on the back cover was in white, and instead they did it in gold, which is very nice. And of course, as an included bonus, there is a fold-out poster of a great live shot of the band, which I'll open up for you guys. Very glossy, looks fan-frickin-tastic. And then as for the vinyl, this is indeed limited to 3,000 copies worldwide, and it is pressed on ghostly gold colored vinyl, which looks frickin' magnificent. And there you can see the sort of the blue Bogart label, but instead it's gold, so I guess we'll call it the gold Bogart label, I suppose. And this also utilizes the same metal parts that were included in the box set, mastered by Bernie Grundman. And let me tell you, this sounds absolutely killer. If you don't have the means of getting the box set, you do owe it to yourself to at least get this version. The presentation is phenomenal, but it also sounds freaking incredible. You know, Bernie Grundman is one of the best mastering engineers in the vinyl world, does very well within the audiophile market. And granted, Kiss isn't really your audiophiles band, but he sure makes them sound like $1 million here with this pressing of Dress to Kill. So definitely get this while you can. Great, great stuff. And then here is a little something that I got from Real Gone Music, and I am a huge lover of this band, and this is the last reissue, as of now to my knowledge, that they are doing for this band. They've been reissuing their catalog for the last couple of years, and this is the sort of final piece of the puzzle, and that is the Donnas Bitchin'. So this was their last sort of full-length album. They had sort of gone indie. They left Atlantic Records. They started their own label called Purple Feather, and they did this album and just sort of put it out themselves. Very much in the sort of 80s hair and glam metal sort of vein, with tracks like Don't Wait Up For Me, Wasted, Like an Animal, Here for the Party. Just great, you know, raucous rock and roll. And this pressing from Real Gone is great because you have the main album on the first 3 sides, but then you have side D, which is all the bonus tracks, which appear on different versions of the album, digital and such. I'm actually going to be, I'm sure by the time you watch this, you've probably read the tracking angle review that I did, and I'll point out where all those tracks sort of come from. But needless to say, they replicate some elements of the original artwork quite nicely. And inside the gatefold, we have some liner notes consisting of an interview with Brett Anderson, the vocalist. And inside, we have a little insert here, black and white insert with lyrics. And as for the vinyl, check this out. This comes pressed on sort of, I think they described it as strawberry swirl colored vinyl, and I believe this is limited to less than 1,000 copies. So if you need to complete your Donnas collection, definitely cop this pressing up. And I know that there's a couple of other variants. I believe there's a test pressing on Real Gone Music's website and some others. But nonetheless, I am very happy to sort of somewhat complete my Donnas collection with their reissue of Bitchin'. Okay, so recently Abby and I took a little afternoon excursion out to the city of Philadelphia. We did some shopping, first store that we went to was Urban Outfitters, which is a store that her and I both enjoy. She likes to check out the clothes and the tchotchkes. I like to check out the records and the band tees. And let me tell you, we have come so far as a society that Urban Outfitters in 2025 is now selling Alice Cooper and Thin Lizzy t-shirts. Think about that. But one of the cool things that they do with vinyl is that they offer a lot of cool exclusives. More so in the pop vein, which I'm very much out of the loop on. But there was one particular exclusive that I had seen pop up online a couple of times. And if I ever saw it out in the wild, I would totally snag it up. And sure enough, it was here at the store. And it is the 7-inch for Christina Perri's 1,000 Years. Now, this song was done for the Twilight series, so this is very much, you know, a part of my adolescent upbringing, being a fan of both Twilight as well as Christina. I've been following her work since the early 2010s when she first came out. She's kind of gone under the radar since she has come to embrace, you know, motherhood and everything, but the couple of records that she has done are really, really solid and are worth exploring. And this 7-inch features the original version of the song 1,000 Years, which is included in the soundtrack for Breaking Dawn Part 1, which is the next to last film in the Twilight series. And then the flip side is the lullaby version, since Christina has been doing some child lullaby albums as of recently. But like I said, this is an Urban Outfitters exclusive, and it is pressed on red vinyl, which is really, really awesome. So I was very happy to get my hands on this. Then we took a little walk over to Sampson Street, and we stopped at one of the record stores that I usually check out every time I'm in the city, and that is Long in the Tooth. Walked right in, and there was the rack of newly released titles, or at least several weeks worth of new releases. And I saw this record, and I knew that it was coming out. I think I had a pre-order for it that I ended up canceling. But then when I saw it out in the wild, I was like, you know what? It's more of an incentive to pick it up. And that is King Crimson Lizard Elemental Mixes. So over the past several years, King Crimson has been sort of remixing some of their albums in the form of elemental mixes. I believe they've done In the Court of the Crimson King, Lark's Tongues and Aspic, Red, and now this. And it's not exactly a remix in the sense of how Steven Wilson does remixes, but David Singleton, who is the sort of King Crimson audio guru, takes a lot of these sort of underlying mix elements from these certain albums, brings them out and mixes them in a way that very much sort of retransforms the albums and like puts them in a different light, which make them very interesting to listen to. And I think for an album like Lizard, which is very much rooted in this sort of jazz fusion prog sort of realm, I think this will be a very fascinating listen to hear it in an elemental light per se. It's definitely an album that did not get as much love as it deserved back when it came out, and I kind of understand why. It doesn't really fit in with the lineage of King Crimson's progression, because this was the period where like there wasn't really a definitive lineup in place. But over the years, in retrospect, you know, Robert Fripp and company have gave it some love, going as far as to performing most of it live in concert, and I'm really excited to check this out. It kind of has a sort of, I guess you could say, remixed rendering of the album artwork. And Lizard, just for you guys to know, if you see like all the sort of medieval influences inside the letters and such, this is like one of my favorite album covers, and it's cool to see a sort of fresh take on it. Back cover features a shot of the lineup that appears on the album. You have Gordon Haskell on bass and vocals, Peter Sinfield still doing lyrics, Mel Collins on sax, who was in the last iteration of Crimson, and of course Robert Fripp himself, Andy McCullough. This is going to be a very fun listen, and it's pressed on 200-gram vinyl, just like all King Crimson vinyl pressings, especially as of recently. And we have some cool artsy center labels as well, which look really, really great. And yeah, like I said, this is going to be a very fun listen. Now, since we are nearing the holidays, it ain't the holidays unless there is some new Beatles product. And yes, the flavor of the year in 2025 is the Beatles Anthology. And of course, the documentary series is up on Disney+. They did an extra 9th episode to go with the original 8 that were done back in 95. And aside from remastering Anthologies 1, 2, and 3, they also released Anthology 4. This basically covers the entire, recording history of the Beatles from 60s up until, beginning of 1970, and it also includes new mixes of Free as a Bird and Real Love, which were the two new songs that the Threedles, as we'll call them, Paul, George and Ringo did. Yoko had given them cassettes of John demos, and they just worked their magic. And of course, it includes Now and Then. But it also has a lot of, unreleased outtakes, from their recording career, along with some highlights that appeared as bonus material on the various super deluxe editions that have come out in the last almost 10 years or so. And of course, when it comes to Beatles product, it's such a hypersensitive thing because those fans are never pleased with anything. And I am on the optimistic side of we're lucky to get anything, period. And it's cool that they went ahead and did a fresh anthology, shine a light on some of the notable cool parts of those super deluxe sets, and also give us some unreleased bits. And I think in this case, this is one of those rare instances where the fans won, because when they announced this was only going to be available in a box set with the remastered Anthology 1, 2, and 3. And, granted, I wanted this, and I was more than willing to, get rid of my originals and get the box so I can get this. But then they announced, hey, we're going to release this separately. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to go down that route. I'll save myself, some time and hassle, and as well as money, and just get the standalone Anthology 4. And as you can see, it has the collage that basically comprises the artwork. So this is like Anthology 1, 2, and 3. They put it together for 4. I love how they kept it in line with the other installments in the series. And the trifold spread is just like the others. You have the collage of photos in the middle, track by track breakdown. This is going to be a very fun, immersive listen. Like I said, every Christmas holiday season, there's some new Beatles product, and it's great that we're looking 30 years back with the Beatles Anthology, even though we want the Rubber Soul Super Deluxe. Apple, please do it. But nonetheless, I'm happy to have this as well. Beatles Anthology 4. All right, here's some good stuff here. You wanted the best, you got the best. Yes, I got the Kiss Alive 50th anniversary box set, but I could not ignore the 50th anniversary colored vinyl pressing. So here we have Kiss Alive, and the colored vinyl Kiss Online exclusive was announced at the same time as the Kiss Alive box, which I had unboxed on my channel. And I went ahead, had to place the order for it. Although in this case, instead of selling the hoodie or the shirt, I gave the hoodie to my girlfriend. She really likes it, so I was happy to give it to her. But to kind of point out the notable differences that make this version very unique is the fact that we have gold inlays for the white text on the jacket, and there you can see the gold foil is sort of on the album title, as well as 1, 2, 3, and 4. And all the track list and credits are in gold instead of white. Same on the bottom here. You open it up, same deal. Text and borders are all in gold. Replicates the original gatefold. Now, as for the booklet, it's printed on this sort of foil paper, which is really nice. Mainly just the front and back. And then everything else inside is pretty much standard paper stock. Now, what's odd is that, yes, it's great that we have this booklet with this pressing, because it obviously came with the original, but this booklet was not replicated for the Super Deluxe box, which I thought was really, really peculiar. But as an added bonus, we have a fold-out poster. And it's not just some live shot, which would have been cool. We have a poster consisting of the banner that is seen on the back, which I think is absolutely great. Definitely suitable for framing. Any Kiss diehard would go nuts over this and what it resembles. And as for the vinyl, it is limited to 3,000 copies worldwide, so they upped it by 1,000 because they're typically 2,000. And this is pressed on what's described as gold and white cornetto with black splatter vinyl, which looks really freaking sick. And as you can see, we have a gold rendering of that original Casablanca label. So as they called it the blue Bogart, I'm calling this the gold Bogart. So we have that right here, and I'll just showcase the other LP as well. Also, here's the hype sticker. I just paste these on my poly-lined inners. And here is the second LP. And yes, this is the cut done by Bernie Grunman. Bernie has done all the vinyl stuff for both the Dress to Kill and Alive box sets, along with the colored vinyl pressings as well. So they use those metal parts. And let me tell you, I listened to the box set. It sounds wonderful. But it is great to have this copy, which I think is the coolest looking copy of Kiss Alive that I have in my collection. And of course, like I always say, greatest live album of all time. All right, guys, it is time to talk about the newest sort of novelty type product within the vinyl marketplace, and that is Tiny Vinyl. So Tiny Vinyl is a new company that just launched fairly recently, and their big claim to fame is they manufacture 4-inch vinyl records, which, not gonna lie, I think the idea of having a little record like this is very cute, nice and compact in size, big enough to where you can kind of slide it in your back pocket, bring it with you on the go. You know, for someone like myself who loves the vinyl format and the ways that you can sort of stretch the boundaries of the product, you know, whether it's having the Zoetrope picture discs or liquid-filled records or tiny vinyl, you know, this is just a way of the format evolving and getting people into the fun of the hobby, as well as just kind of expanding the boundaries of it. And these are only available at Target. I went to my local Target. Their inventory was kind of slim on these tiny records. So my girlfriend and I, we were doing some shopping in the Berlin area. We stopped at the Target there, and sure enough, they had one of the ones that I was after, and this is Lacrima, backed with Mary on a Cross by Ghost. As you can see, we have a cool sort of artistic rendering of a skeleton holding Papa Five's Perpetua's head. Here's the track list on the back, and also it's the rock radio edit of Lacrima, so it'll be fun to hear what's different about this compared to the album cut. And it's cute because it's like a little mini gatefold. It opens up. Here you have Papa right there. And then as for the vinyl, it is pressed on purple vinyl. Nice little small label there. I'm telling you, it looks comical, but it's really cool. You know, it's the collector in me that loves this kind of stuff. So I know that they also did a tiny vinyl for Black Sabbath Paranoid. That's another one that I'm after, but hopefully I'll find that in my travels. But really glad to have kind of started my little tiny vinyl collection by picking up the Ghost single. And keeping it in the Ghost Lacrima vein, we have a really cool collectible piece here, and that is, of course, the Lacrima 7-inch picture disc. This is actually really crazy. So I remember I saw an ad on Instagram that this had appeared on the Loma Vista website, and it was limited to 1,000 copies worldwide. And I realized I had some points on my card, so I ended up just using my points, didn't really pay, you know, anything out of pocket for it. And it's one of those cases where I placed the order, like 20 minutes to a half hour passed. I went on the website to just see if there were any other copies up for grabs. Sold out. So right place and right time, let me just say. So this has Lacrima backed with Guiding Lights, both from the new Skeleton album that came out this year in 2025. And as you can see, we have like an alternate rendering of that sort of cover that you saw from the tiny vinyl. You can kind of spot out the differences here, which is pretty cool. And then here is the back. It kind of comes in this PVC sleeve, which I'll definitely get out and put it in a nice anti-static one. But nonetheless, you know, when it comes to Ghost vinyl, there's a lot of, you know, collectible pressings out there. And since this is so limited and sold out so quick, I'm sure this will certainly rack up in value. But it's a cool one to have for myself in the collection. Now let's dig into some New York finds. So I recently went up to New York, and I actually had lunch with a gentleman by the name of Robert Conti. Now, if you are a Kiss fan, that name might sound familiar. Robert Conti was Kiss's catalog consultant in the 90s, around the time of the reunion tour. And he's a guy that kind of knows a thing or two about, you know, what's in the Universal vaults. And I was kind of picking his brain on some stuff that I wanted to include for my written review of the Alive box set. And we discussed some other things. And he actually gave me a record that he actually had a hand in being an executive producer of. And it is A Story of Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Werewolf. So this is a record that dates back to around like the 50s or 60s. And it's kind of like a spoken word sort of like story type of record. And what's cool about it is that it comes with a sort of graphic novel comic that you kind of flip through and follow as you listen to the record, which I think is really cool. And this has been repressed a couple of times, according to Robert. And this is an original first run on what is called Vampire Blood splatter vinyl. Comes in a nice PVC sleeve with a nice backing sheet. It is really, really cool. So thank you so much, Robert, for this. And then I had to make my way to some record stores in the city. I decided to revisit a store that I hadn't been to since before COVID. And I think I did, I don't know if I filmed a video there at the store, but I remember the one time that I went there, I bought so much stuff that I did a video on just what I bought there because it was such a great haul. And I believe they also helped me out one year for Record Store Day. They hooked me up with a bunch of stuff. And that store is DJ Rock and Soul. And it's a fantastic shop. They had a bunch of Record Store Day leftovers from Black Friday. I held the Eric Carr liquid-filled vinyl in my hands, but I just couldn't justify dropping $200 then and there. But their inventory was absolutely stellar, and I managed to pick up a copy of Billy Joel's Cold Spring Harbor. This is his first album. She's Got a Ways on here. Everybody Loves You Now. This is one that I've been really kind of itching to get my hands on for a very long time. I know that, Billy himself doesn't think too much about this record, but it's just rooted in that piano-driven singer-songwriter vein that I very much admire. And truth be told, when I was doing my own music, it was kind of in the same vein. Not that I look to Billy Joel for inspiration, but I can kind of see where the similarities are. So I was really glad to pick this up for myself. This is a reissue. I'm not sure if it uses the corrected speed, version that Columbia had reissued, or if this is the same speed as the original. Not quite sure, but nonetheless, I'm really glad to beef up the Billy Joel collection further. And as you see, it has that classic Columbia label there. So, good stuff. And then I took a walk over to Rough Trade at Rockefeller Center. That was a whole other thing, because I think that day that I was in the city was the day that the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center had lit up, and like streets were closed off. There were so many people, and I was just a man on a mission. I'm like, let me just go to this record store. Like, I'm paying no mind. And I was on a real hunt for some records by this band, and I love this band so much, but I'm lacking on a lot of their stuff, and I need to get a lot of the early records. So nonetheless, I picked up Go to School by the Lemon Twigs. Now, this is a double concept album about a chimpanzee who is raised as a young boy. So a little bit of an interesting concept there. But this is their second album. Get that, second album, and it's a concept rock opera type of album. But nonetheless, when it comes to the Lemon Twigs and their own style of that sort of retro power pop, baroque rock, type of thing, I absolutely love it. These guys are fantastic. And also, they're from New York. Same with Billy Joel. So it made sense to pick up some New York artists while I was in the city. But this is a 2 LP set. There are the brothers, Brian and Michael, there on the back. Gatefold opens up. We have some illustrations to kind of go along with the album. And there's all kinds of goodies inside. I know that there's a download card in here, but we also have a double-sided poster, which is really freaking sweet. And of course, standard black vinyl with some nice orange custom labels there. Really good stuff, and slowly but surely completing my Lemon Twigs vinyl collection. Okay, so let's talk about Record Store Day Black Friday. Now, most of the stuff on my want list was actually stuff that Rhino was putting out, and I was very gracious that they were able to send me everything that I was after to show you guys on the channel, and also I was able to review some stuff for Tracking Angle and Groovy Music Club, but there was still like a small list of titles that I was after that Rhino didn't put out, and needless to say, that list went from like 4 titles to 1. Right off the bat, I did not snag the Eric Carr liquid-filled records for Rockology and Unfinished Business. They still keep reissuing those titles. And it's crazy because, like, the Kiss diehard in me would love to have them. Plus, you know, liquid-filled records are the newest niche novelty thing in the marketplace, and I would like to have at least one. But, you know, $100 a pop. I just could not do it. And that's also given that it was a very expensive Kissmas with both the Dress to Kill and Alive box sets. So I'm hoping that if I play the waiting game right, they'll come down to hopefully $50 a pop. And if they do, then that's when I'll jump on it. But we'll see. And then there was the Billy Joel live release, which I wanted, but I was reading some stuff that side 1 was mispressed, and then because it was limited to 1,500, copies were very expensive, so that was kind of out the window too. So it got whittled down to 1. And the one Record Store Day Black Friday release that I ended up snagging was Jazz Sabbath Live. Now, Jazz Sabbath is led by Adam Wakeman, who was Black Sabbath's touring keyboardist. He also toured with Ozzy solo. And to sort of tie it all in, Adam's father, Rick, who had played with Yes, played some keyboards on Sabbath's album, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. So it all kind of is full circle. But he's been doing this project for a number of years, and if you're wondering what it's all about, it's all in the name. It's jazz renditions of Black Sabbath songs. And if you know those early records off the back of your hand, you will love and appreciate the renditions. It honestly works. And it's just a trio. You know, Adam's on piano, he's got a drummer and an upright bassist, and they just run through the early Sabbath catalog, as you can see with the track list of this 2 LP collection that was recorded earlier this year in 2025. And it's always a fun listen. It makes for good dinner music too. If you can't put on actual Sabbath, you can put on a nice little alternative. But it's a cool package altogether. Nice gatefold jacket. There's a brief little write-up, slight fictitious write-up, I should say. If you've collected the other Jazz Sabbath titles from previous years, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Off the top of my head, I can't remember how many copies of this were pressed. For all I know, it might be an RSD exclusive or an RSD first. I'm not quite sure, either one. But it is pressed on translucent orange vinyl, which looks really, really great. And this is definitely a nice, chill kind of listen. So if you like jazz and Sabbath, this is definitely one for you. And I'll showcase the last LP before we move on forward. And there we have it. Good stuff. Really glad that I was able to get this for Record Store Day Black Friday. Next up, we're going to focus on the latest piece of unofficial Dream Theater vinyl that has come out fairly recently. And that is Greatest Hit and 21 other pretty cool songs. So this compilation came out back in 2008, only on CD. This was after Dream Theater had left Atlantic, Echo, whatever, all those subsidiary labels, and they oversaw their first ever compilation, which is clever the way that it's broken down. So the original 2 CD version broke it up into the dark side and the light side. So obviously all the heavy songs were on one CD, and then you had all the sort of more melodic, you know, lighter tunes on the other. But what makes this comp so great is that it utilizes some new remixes of the Images and Words tracks. There's a couple of single edits and radio edits that just kind of make it more of an incentive for the sort of diehard collectors to get, but it's also not too daunting for the novice listener. And during my time growing up as a Dream Theater fan in the tail end of the 2000s, this compilation really came to clutch. But also, too, the title is clever because Pull Me Under was their only hit, so it's the only one greatest hit, and then they beef it up with some other cool songs as per the full title. But yeah, so this is pressed up on 3 LPs total. It is a single pocket jacket, and each of the LPs come in the exact same printed inner, which is kind of a letdown, but you sort of have this photo collage of the guys throughout the years. This covers 91 up until 2005, so Images and Words up to Loctavarium. But it's a fun listen. I mean, if you just know those original records and all the full 10-minute plus versions of their classic tracks, and you want to hear a 5-minute edit, you know, you go to this. But it's really, really good stuff, and it's pressed on translucent orange vinyl, which is absolutely stellar. There's the label right there. And I'll definitely be reliving some nostalgia while digging my way through this collection. Good stuff. And then recently at my job, we did a little Secret Santa type thing where we kind of just picked a name out of the hat, and we ended up, you know, buying for that person. Needless to say, one of my coworkers ended up with me, and obviously I make my love for music and vinyl quite obvious where I work at. So she picked me for Secret Santa, and she found my Discogs, which she was very clever. Props to you, Ashley, for doing this, to make sure that I didn't have this. So that was smart. But what did she get me? She got me Paul McCartney, Paul is Live. So this is a live album that McCartney had put out around the early 1990s, like I want to say 93, 94. And as you can see, it kind of riffs on Abbey Road, but also it kind of sort of serves as a complement to all of the Paul is dead stuff that, you know, when you look at Abbey Road, there's all these references, you know, instead of, you know, Paul is dead, Paul is live. Get it? Little funny thing there. Great photo collage here on the gatefold, 2 LPs. Great set list too. I do have to say, you know, obviously you get your generous serving of Beatles classics, Drive My Car, All My Loving, We Can Work It Out, Magical Mystery Tour, the cover of Kansas City. But then in terms of solo stuff, you know, you have Let Me Roll It. What else? My Love. Live and Let Die, of course. There's a couple of sound check recordings as well. So this will be a fun listen. It's been a hot minute since I last picked up some McCartney-related vinyl. I'll just showcase one of the LPs because it's pretty much the same across, but we have some cool kind of fancy schmancy labels there, which looks really, really great. So thank you very much, Ashley, for this. Now let's dig into some Walmart exclusives. And I gotta say, you know, if you're a collector, regardless of the whole, you know, indie versus big box war, if you're a collector and you love collecting variants, you gotta go after the Walmart stuff. Seriously. But funny enough, I just forked out for a box set centered on this album, and here I was buying my second version of it, but, you know, in the collecting game, that's sometimes what you do. So I picked up Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here. Obviously, I got the big 50th anniversary set, but then I saw that they were doing a Walmart exclusive colored vinyl version. I was like, oh, hell yes. Also, fun fact that I didn't realize until I got this version, the metal parts used for this pressing, as well as the one in the box set, are of the 2016 Bernie Grundman remaster. And then Grundman also did the extra material as well. So, little fun fact. Obviously, it does not have the black opaque bag. And there's also no postcard as well, which I find kind of peculiar. But the printed inner sleeve is here. And it is pressed on yellow vinyl, which is absolutely wonderful. Again, I think I've said it before and I'll say it again. Sony getting the Floyd catalog, best thing they could have done, because now we're getting cool stuff like this. The box set, Pompeii, whatever's to come in 2026, we shall see. And then the other exclusive I got, and this one's really cool, that is Iron Maiden's Live After Death. Now, this album celebrates its 40th anniversary. As for Pink Floyd, it was 50th. For here, it is the 40th. Classic live album. You know, in a time where the double live albums sort of maybe tapered off after the 70s, this is one of those notable ones that stands out from the pack. Just Iron Maiden firing on all cylinders during the Power Slave tour, live in Long Beach, as well as Hammersmith on side 4, and there was the concert film as well. It's just a fantastic metal live album. Now, this 40th anniversary version is pretty unique because obviously, you know, it does replicate all aspects of the original artwork. Photo collage, you got the mummified Eddie shooting fireworks out of the eyes. But what's cool is we do have an updated version of the original booklet that came with the album. And it's updated because we have a little write-up talking about the history of the album, and I think Steve Harris, Nico McBrain, Derek Riggs, and Rod Smallwood kind of look back at, you know, the time frame. They add their 2 cents. We have some blow-ups of the single sleeves from the album. So that takes up the first couple pages, and then it morphs into the original booklet that we remember. I say we as if I was there. That you guys remember from back when this album came out in '85. So we have some great live shots, band and crew, all kinds of good stuff. And then the first LP, I'm going to go through this in each pocket. First LP is fittingly on blue vinyl, which is great. And this is also the Chris Bellman cut of Live After Death, which I think in my collection, I had the Sean McGee version. I'll be curious to see how Bellman's cut sounds. And then as an added bonus, we have a replica World Slavery Tour tour program, which is really great. I think I actually have an original one somewhere that I bought years back. And by looking at this, it's a little grainy in places, and the colors are a bit darker. It looks like the contrast is boosted, but the paper stock that they used for this is really, really thick. Like, it almost feels like paperboard almost, flipping through this. But it's a great addition to have, and obviously it makes sense and it's complimentary because this album was recorded during the World Slavery Tour. And obviously the printed inners, as you can see, are straight up from the original photo collage. You have all the lyrics here so you can sing along. And the second LP is pressed on... that almost fell. On yellow vinyl. So it matches the color scheme perfectly between the blues and the yellows. So overall, great stuff. As of lately, Walmart is absolutely killing it with their exclusives. So there you guys go. That is the first episode of Vinyl Pickups. Now here is a question for you guys. What records did you end up snagging at the tail end of 2025? Please drop a comment down below. I'd love to know. And if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video. And most importantly, keep the records spinning.